Today I'm going to be teaching a mini lesson on botanical illustration. We're going to start out on watercolor paper. This is a little technique I use to tape the paper down, in which I de-stick the tape typically on my sleeve or a piece of cloth, and then tape it down to the board. Next, we're going to be selecting a couple plants. Today I have a snapdragon and a little succulent start. So I'm starting by laying out my page, kind of sectioning off the succulent to the bottom right, and then laying out the snapdragon across the majority of the page. Then we're going to start drawing it out. We want to think about the basic shapes. The succulent is elliptical, thinking about the leaves of the snapdragon kind of folding over, the stem of the snapdragon being the main diagonal on the page, and then laying out the petals that are kind of gonna be the basis of the painting. So you can see it tapers toward the top with the buds, so we're going to include that. Then I'm adding the basis for the lines that we're going to label it with. Now we're going to start with some watercolor. I tend to first water down all of my paints if they're stiff or hard, so that I can go in and use them a little bit easier later. We're going to start mixing the colors. I started with the green of the stem and the leaves of the snapdragon. You can see there's some green in the petals as well, and then mixing some pink for the petals. This is a wet on wet technique in which we add water first to the paper and then add the color on top of the wet paper. It helps get a really natural blend between the various colors we'll be using, and it ends up with some really light, soft pastel colors, which goes well with these flowers that I've selected. So you can see I'm wetting the page down, and then I'm adding the pink, as that's the majority of the petals, and then I'm adding the yellows and greens that I see inside as well. I'm kind of pointing them out as I go. And you can see the pink clings most strongly to the outside of the page and fades in. That's where a wet on wet technique is really nice. And then as we move up to the buds that haven't quite opened of the flower, you'll see it leans more toward green. So I'll put maybe half or a third of pink and the rest in green. And then toward the top where it is just mostly green, I'll add a little bit of pink and then most of that yellow green that I've selected. Now you'll notice I have this petal to the middle right, but I haven't painted that one yet until I've kind of selected all the way up the rest of the page so that I'm not rubbing my hand over it and getting it wet. Moving on to the succulent, this one's more of a blue-green, so I'm mixing a different green color here. And I'll lay it into the leaf that the start has started from, then up the little stem to the new leaves, the buds that are coming on. Then I'm taking a watered down version of the pink to lay in the roots. Now I'm going into the stem of the snapdragon with a darker blue-green, kind of similar to the succulent color, but a lot darker. And I'm just laying in all of the leaves there with that color. I'll go in and touch it up with a little bit of a lighter yellow-green, but this kind of gets the stark contrast between the page and that strong diagonal of the stem really well. Here you can see I'm lightening it up and adding some shadow and some highlight. Now I'm going in, this isn't gray, it's called a neutral tint. It's basically a gray created from actual color instead of a charcoal base, and I'm adding the lines that will be the future reference lines to all of the different pieces. I also like using this neutral tint because it's a really quick way to lay in shadow. So you can see I'm adding kind of the darker parts and outlining some of the petals to create a better contrast. And that really helps to outline the shapes that we're seeing here. You can see I'm outlining each of the buds there, and to get a better shadow there. I'll do this as well to the succulent to create that shape and to add some more definition to the root system. Now I'm taking a pen and I'm outlining that outline of the succulent and adding each of my labels. This is again the snapdragon and a succulent. There we have it. That's the project for today.